Alright you guys, welcome back again to 13 Motorsports. In this episode we're going to continue on working with the Streetfighter build. We're going to get the subframe mostly mounted up and we're going to get the headlight mounted up, and it's really all starting to come together into an actual motorcycle. Stay tuned. Alright you guys, since you saw the bike last night, I got the handlebars on, but I also went ahead and put on my controls. They're just kind of mocked in place right now. I wanted to get a feel for them, see what it was really like. Put my new Strata 7 levers on there. I really like those are nice. The headlight, as you can see, is very securely mounted using painter's tape. That should be solid. Now what I'm working on today is this tail section here. So this tail section is a race tail section, it's fiberglass. And basically this is from a bike that we never got here in the States. It's a Honda RS 250. I just like the look of it. I think it flows really well. Problem is, obviously it was designed for a 250cc motorcycle, so it's designed for a much smaller bike than this. Therefore the width on it, it's really small, it's really narrow. So I'm having to build a custom subframe to make it work with this tail section. I'm trying to use some of the factory sizes on the original subframe because I still want to use the factory side panels here. So I'm kind of mimicking the stock subframe to a certain point, and then I'm gonna have to narrow it up so it'll fit this new tail. All right, so you can see this is what I've got so far. Again, this is mimicking the stock subframe, which was of course made out of aluminum, but I'm just making this one out of steel because it's a lot simpler to work with steel. I can make cleaner, neater welds on it. And for me, it's just easier to manipulate. Will it be a little bit heavier than the stock one? Probably so, but honestly, I'm not that concerned about it. But actually, believe it or not, making all of these individual bends and stuff and making it match up to the original was a little bit trickier than I had expected it to be. However, my problem now is, so I can still use the stock seat on here. And it goes something like that. I'll have to build a crossbar. But the problem is, the width of the tail section there is about 9¼ inches. Well, as it sits now, it's about 11 inches in width. So I need this whole section to come in quite a bit. Come in about inch and a quarter. That way I can fit that tail section over it. Plus I need to put the crossbar in, put this guy on. But it's kind of fun. I do get to test out my new tool today. I have my nutsert tool that I'm gonna drill some holes and rivet in my nutserts, so I want to check that out. I did manage to get some more work done there. As you can see, I went ahead and narrowed it up so that it actually fits the seat well. Alright, so the tool that I use for the rip nut is this Astro pneumatic tool, and I was really excited to get it a few weeks ago and I haven't had a chance to try it until now. I'm really happy with this thing. It works really well, it's super easy to use, and it's just awesome because if you look at the crossbar here, this is actually for the seat mount. Man, you just stick it in there, tighten it up, unthread it, and bam. All right, so that's the tail section on there. Now again, I still have to do a lot of brackets and stuff to actually final mount this thing, but this kind of gives you a little general sense of what the bike will actually look like. And the important thing is, before I actually final mount that tail section, I really want to get the headlight mounted. You can see I did some preliminary work, so I started some mounts here for the lower mounts, and then where the clip-ons used to mount underneath the triple there, I went ahead and turned up some mounts there so I can weld off of that. One of the very first things I did is I went ahead and wrapped the entire headlight assembly in painter's tape. This includes the plastic shrouding around it as well. And the reason why I did that is because I want to protect this, because this costs quite a bit of money just for the headlight and the shroud itself. And you don't want to get any kind of welding slag or anything like that burned into your brand new headlight lens. That would be really frustrating. So I went ahead and put all the painter's tape on there. That way, this way I can do the mock-up and actually at least get the metal tacked into place for the mounts. And then once I have everything tacked and moved where I want it to, then I can actually remove the headlight assembly and finish weld the bracket and then bolt everything back up. So it's just a good tip to, if you have painter's tape, go ahead and wrap it up, or some newspaper or whatever you can do, just cover it up so it doesn't get damaged. All right, also for the sake of time, I went ahead and turned up these mounts already to get things started. You can see, just have some Allen bolts holding them in. But what I did was I just took some 1/2 inch round bar, went ahead and drilled them turned them up, just made like basically a starting point that I could weld something to create our mounts. So there's 4 of those, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so basically, I'm just gonna set this in place about here. I already have the mounts started on the front end. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna approximate where exactly I want the headlight at, and then I'm going to measure from the bottom mounts down here. I'm gonna measure from the bottom mounts to the outer mounts and start with these bars first. I'm gonna do each side, and that way I can get my height set and get it centered side to side. And then as soon as I have both of those tacked into place, then I can start tacking my upper bars into place. And then once I have the upper bars tacked into place, I can do crossbars, start tying it all together, and then go from there. I'm also gonna do the gauge mount, all that kind of stuff. So it's a bit of a process, but if you take it slow, it's actually not very difficult. So let's get started. All right, you guys, well, I do apologize, but I had some issues with my camera, so I wasn't able to film the actual making of the headlight mount. But here you can kind of see basically how I went about it. You got your lower mounts there, tied into the upper mounts there. And you can see I also made the gauge cluster mount as well. It comes up over the top. The other side, and mimic it on the other side. And then so you can see the gauge cluster there. Nice clean look, nice and simple. And really this leads me into a couple of topics I wanted to discuss anyway. All right, so motorcycle enthusiasts will ask me a question here. They'll say, hey, Scott, this is a ZX-10R. Didn't you cover up the ram air system? And the answer, yes, I did. I'm not that concerned about it. I'd like to talk to you a bit about my philosophy when it comes to building motorcycles, okay? Most people talk about the function over form. They want the things to perform incredibly well, and if it looks great, that's fine. Well, sorry to say, but I'm the exact opposite. I am a form over function guy, okay? Yes, I do like things to perform well. I want them to perform their capabilities. But in my mind, it's more important that something really looks phenomenal when you're creating it. All right, so here's the deal. When you're creating a motorcycle, you're doing something that's your own expression, right? So that to me is the primary reason behind building form over function, because you want something that really is individually you. And it's something that somebody says, hey, you know, I would love to have that. Where can I get that? And you can reply, you can't. I built it. It's a one-off. And that's really my primary motivation. Secondly, but also importantly, is that the motorcycle genre is a huge field, right? There are tons and tons and tons of motorcycles. So the reality is, if you want a bike that rides really well at the track, you want a bike that rides really well on the street, you want one that rides perfectly off-road, you want an adventure bike, sport touring, whatever category you want, there's a perfect bike for you that works perfectly right off the showroom floor. So the reality is, you're not really going to be able to buy a bike and then improve it by leaps and bounds technologically. Of course, I like to with the older bikes with the newer suspension and brakes and that sort of thing, but that's a little bit different. The reality is there's so many bikes and they're so good nowadays that you can buy one right off the showroom floor that does exactly what you want, and it'll do it better than you ever could building your own bike. Why is that? Well, engineers, they have their research and development, they have time, they have money, they're able to refine things, they're able to make them work as well as possible. In my years of working as an automotive technician, I'll tell you one thing I've realized, is that pretty much everything people do to their vehicles, aftermarket-wise, ruins the vehicle to a certain extent. It'll make it slightly better in one category, but it'll make it a lot worse in a bunch of other categories. Why? Well, the engineers, they have to take it into design as a whole, right? So the whole entire vehicle is designed to work in concert with the other parts, all of it working together as a complement. You change one of those factors and everything else gets all whacked out. And it's a sad reality, but it's something I've come to accept. So I'll give you an example of what I was talking about. In probably about 6 years ago or so, I was building a bike. It's a 1980 Yamaha XS650, old school parallel twin, you know, carbureted bike. Now I changed that to fuel injection and I turbocharged it. I was running what's called a standalone engine management, a mega squirt setup. So I was running an ECU basically that would run the motorcycle. And it's all programmable. So I had cold start tables, I had, you know, fuel tables, timing tables, I had an idle air controller so there was no choke. You just hit the start button, it would fire up on its own and just kind of come up to idle right, and At the time, what I thought I was doing was really like, oh man, this is really impressive. This is real cutting edge technology. That's not true. Basically, all that stuff was being developed back in the 80s. So the refinements between then and now are massive, absolutely massive. So it's not even comparable. So I was kind of fooling myself thinking that. But what it did was, after I did that build, it really, really gave me the respect for engineers. Because engineers, and it's not just one of them, you know, there's a whole team of engineers that work on one specific part of a vehicle. And then another team of engineers works on a different part of the vehicle, and they all come together to make the perfect vehicle that actually works like it's supposed to. And guess what? It doesn't always work the first time. So that's why they refine it and they build it before they release it to the public, because inherently it's going to have flaws. Now the average Joe, like me for instance, I don't really have that luxury. I can't rebuild things over and over again. I have to build things as I see fit and as I think it's going to be best, and then go out and ride it. Undoubtedly, there's going to be limitations to that. That's just the way it is. So I've come to realize that the best solution for me is to not worry so much about the function side of it, because I can try. You know, we can all try. We can learn as much as we can about how to make something work the best that it can, and then move forward. But the reality is, we're never going to be as good as the engineers are, because they have more time, more money, and more research, and more ability to verify that what they're doing will be the correct way to do it. So education is important, but at the same time, what it comes down to for me is just form. I like the way a bike looks, and I want to ride a bike that looks the way I want a bike to look. All right? So that's the first thing. Second thing I wanted to talk about. When you're out here doing metal fabrication, okay, if you're like me, and a lot of guys are, we have a family, we have a full-time job, we have a lot of other obligations, right? So we don't get a whole lot of time to come out here and work on this stuff. I implore you though, if you're not feeling it, don't just press forward and try to accomplish it anyway, because it's going to turn out bad. Now, it's different with mechanicking stuff, because mechanicking, like if you're just putting an engine back together or something, of course, you know, go ahead, get out there, move forward with it, you'll make some progress. But if you're trying to create, if you're trying to make things from scratch, it doesn't work. You have to be in the right mind frame. You have to be in the right mindset. So let me give you an example of that. That same bike I was talking about, that Turbo XS 650. So I was working on a fuel pressure regulator mount for it, and I was really struggling with the idea of how I wanted to do it, and eventually I came up with this plan to make it out of aluminum. And it was kind of a box type deal where the regulator would sit down inside there. I worked on this thing for 4.5 hours. I mean, the time we get to work on this kind of stuff is very limited. So I worked on that thing for 4.5 hours. You know what I did when I was done with it? I threw it in the garbage, because it was a piece of junk. And I pressed forward when I shouldn't have. I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't in the mood. And it stifles your creativity, and you come up with something that's horrible. And usually what happens is you're working on it and you're like, man, I don't really like it, but maybe I'll like it more tomorrow. Not true. You'll hate it even more the next day. So don't push yourself. If you're creating from scratch, be in the right mind frame, be in the right mindset. Now, also too, when you're making something like the headlight mount there, so you can tell I like making things out of round bar. I just do. I think it's a very clean way to do it. But you hear this kind of a lot. People say, let the metal talk to you. And that's true to an extent. So when you come out, have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish. Because if you go in with no idea of what you're doing, then you won't get anywhere, because you're just going to sit there and think about it. So think about it beforehand, before you get out to the garage, and say, okay, what am I trying to accomplish, and have a general idea of how you'd like to accomplish that. But as you start building, watch and see how it's going, and just try things. Bend up some metal, give it a shot. Say, man, that's cool. I like the way that looks. I'd like to continue with that. Or you say, well, that's not working. Junk that, try something else. It has to come out somewhat organically. And by that I mean it just make it feel right to you. If you do that, you're going to end up with something that you can appreciate and be proud of, and believe it or not, it'll flow with the rest of the bike a lot better than if you just stick to a rigid design. Like if you have something pre-drawn up that you're trying to do, and you stick to it millimeter by millimeter, well, let me tell you, things look a lot different in real life than they do on a piece of paper. So you have to be able to adapt while you're building. And that's my second piece of advice to you. I can't get out. Okay, so we got the primary headlight mount done, but it's not finished all the way. I still need to do some turn signal mounts on this thing. So these are the turn signals that we're going to be using. This is about where they're going to go. I'm just gonna build a little bracket off of here. Not sure if I'm quite gonna match in here just to like cover up all that area, or I think I'll probably just keep it short and simple just like that. And I'll build that mount up, stick a turn signal on either side, and then the headlight mount will be pretty much finished. Now you can see here in the top, there's a good amount of area here where I could build some sort of a scoop setup to funnel down in there and actually make the ram air setup work. I don't know, I'm still thinking about it. I'll see if I want to do that. All right, so I did decide to go with a little bit of gap there. I just think the look is a little bit better, a little bit more stylish than just leaving it fully enclosed. So I'm gonna go ahead and tack this thing in place. Missed. Missed again. So this is what I love the most about fabricating. So just a couple of days ago, this was a bunch of round bar and some sheet metal. And now look, you put some time into it, you put some effort into it, and now it's a headlight mount, it's a gauge mount for a custom motorcycle. So let's put it on and check it out. Okay, so there you go. You can kind of see now, I went ahead and finish welded it and just hit it with a DA sander to give it a nice uniform finish. But it's kind of just a couple of ears along the side there. I don't know, I like the gap. I think it adds a little something to it. Although I did make another decision, I changed my mind, which is the beauty of this. You can change your mind however many times you want. So originally I was going to have the turn signals drilled in the hole right here and have them there. I did that on another bike and I like the way it looked. However, with the way I built them, they have an angle to them. They're kind of angled upward. So if I put the turn signals there, they would be angled upward as well, like funny looking ears, and that's not going to work for me. So I'm thinking right now I'm just going to weld another tab along the back, alongside here. That way I can just aim it straight the direction I want, nice and flat, and we'll go from there. Okay, there we go. It's all installed. You got the side plates, the turn signals. So they came out just fine. That should work out pretty well. All right. So the headlight mount is pretty much done unless I decide to do that scoop in there. I'll take another thought about that and see if I want to do that or not. But now I'd like to transition on to the exhaust. As you can see right now, I don't have an exhaust on there. I have one ready though. Check it out. All right, so here's the exhaust I'm using for this motorcycle. As you can see, it's an M4 carbon fiber exhaust, and as you can also see, it's been on the sun. You can see the spot where the strap is still nice and clean and shiny. The rest is pretty faded. So what I need to do is I need to kind of sand this down just a little bit, hit it with another gloss coat so it gets all shiny again. The downside is that right here along the top edge, you can kind of see there's some scratch marks there. So I need to try to sand those out without damaging the carbon underneath and get that re-coated again. But on the whole, I really like the look of it. I think it's gonna fit this motorcycle perfectly. Problem is, this thing was supposed to fit the ZX-10R bolt-on. Now, I'm not sure if this is because it already had an aftermarket Muzzy exhaust, but the link pipe on it is way too short, so it doesn't actually fit. So I have an extra length of pipe here that I can use to extend this link pipe, or actually I'll use a mid pipe that I'll extend, and that way this thing will fit. Now, I have to build that mid pipe, and then I also have to build a bracket off the back of here for the muffler to mount to, for the strap to mount to. So that's what we're gonna try to accomplish right now. Okay, so I went ahead and zipped together this little mid pipe here. Maybe not the cleanest thing in the world, but I think it'll be effective for what I'm doing. And as you can see there, the exhaust. And what I'm really liking about it is that if you look at it from this side over here, angle of the can is the exact same angle as the tail right now. So that's pretty cool. I want to make sure I maintain that. So I still got to build the bracket for the rear hanger itself. But overall, I really think the bike's coming together. All right, you guys, well, I ran out of time working on the rear exhaust bracket. However, that being said, I really like how the bike's coming together. It's really fitting the vision that I had in my head. Let me know what you guys think. I really appreciate you guys watching these videos. It really gives me motivation to continue on and to do it better each and every time. I hope I'm achieving that. Let me know in the comments how you feel about it. And by all means, subscribe if you like. So we'll see you next time on 13 Motorsports.